Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Cody Johnston joining us live from Canada, a software developer, over 10 years experience specializing in full stack development, cloud solutions, and microservices. And he's passionate about building scalable, user-centric applications and exploring how AI is shaping the future of software development and the world. Welcome to the show, Cody.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Cody. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll be talking about AI, we'll talk about politics, and as well as innovation. We'll talk about all this. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Sure. I actually have a diploma, or I have two diplomas from St. Lawrence College and Niagara College for networking and technical support and computer programming. That started my career into the Ministry of Transportation, where I established my career as a software developer. As of a couple of years ago, I lived in Ontario for most of my life, and me and my partner decided to just cut bail and move to the island of Newfoundland. And with our five animals, and we don't regret it at all. We're seeing Canada from a new perspective, and I get to kind of showcase to the world how AI is going to shape it now. So yeah, I'm working towards building a channel to kind of bring understanding back to the world.
Absolutely, bringing understanding back to the world. What sort of understanding do you think the world needs in today's time, especially in the backdrop of two big wars going on, one in the Middle East, one in Europe, and in many smaller ones across the globe?
I just think people have this barrier of communication. That is one of the big things of my channel, will be always multilingual. Because I feel like the barrier of language has always been holding us back from actually giving the message we're trying to send out. It's always interpreted through somebody else's lens. AI is finally giving us the tools to say it in our own voices, in our own words, with our own actions. And I think we're going to become more of a communication, a global species in terms of communication now. We're not going to have to rely on people to do that interpretation for us. We'll have devices.
Absolutely, Cody. So one who is interested in politics, especially Canada politics, how do you see this whole AI changing? Do you think the world will become much more cohesive, and do you think that will all be AI will lead to much more challenges for democracy, sovereignty of countries, just like Bitcoin and all other crypto is doing at the moment?
I definitely think AI is going to disrupt everything we're going to see. I definitely think the next 5 years are very important. We are feeding, right now, AI is being built off of what we fed it for the past 20 years of the internet. And the past 20 years of the internet has been infancy and adolescence and hate and that kind of thing. So I think the next 5 years, we really should be pumping the internet filled with love and appreciation, and just trying to get people to understand more than anything else, because we eventually want this intelligence, it's going to become sentient, to understand us, more complex than just our hate and our rage and stuff. So I think the next 5 years are really going to shape how it's going to actually shape our democracy, shape our world, how people survive. And I really can't stress that enough. Fill the internet with love and hope right now.
Building the internet. Let's hope for the best. I too want a world like that even the internet, not only the real, but also the internet, should be filled with hope and love. But what about government? Means, do you think AI, if it starts challenging government structures, then it will be a totally new world order, new world altogether, that the barriers of nations will fall down and new sort of boundaries will be created that will have no boundaries actually? Yep. How do you see the world in that light, where there are barriers boundaries but no barriers.
Yes. So right now, every government's struggling over how do we restrict AI, and unfortunately, cat's out of the bag. There is no restriction anymore. Like as soon as the AI was released to the world, everybody's got access to it, and it is going to grow from there. No government can control this anymore. So it is going to disrupt everything. And the one thing I think government should be doing right now is building their own model, building because we're going to still want our identities as our own countries. So building our models to train on who we are as a people, like our understandings are, what our ethics are, and then bringing that to the world, because eventually we're going to become a good intergalactic species. That's where we're headed. So eventually we're going to have to lose these barriers and become one global economy, one global nation. But I don't think we're ready for that yet. We need to like teach and understand a little bit more before we get there.
Absolutely. And so obviously no one is ready. We have just a few years of AI and so many years yet to see this development. But in terms of politics, let's talk about Canada. Where is Canada at the moment? Trump says he wants to make Canada his 51st state. Canada is looking at things very, and then there is this whole tariff barrier and wars, and the Canada internal politics itself. How do you see this whole? Where do you think Canada wants to be? How do you think people want Canada want Canada to be seen in the world? How do you think politicians are making it seen in the world? How do you think in the future Canada will come out to be? Because you are also looking at it Canada from a different angle altogether.
Yeah. And right now we have a lot of polarity, and I can't stress that enough. So our system is very much different than the American system, but unfortunately, for the past 20 years, we've kind of been indoctrinated in the American ideology. So Canadians kind of don't understand how our politics really work. So right now, it's all about scandals and who's doing what and where. So like you have Pierre and Carney really going at each other, just saying, like, trying to slander each other. And the biggest thing that I've taken away is nobody's actually telling us what they're going to do. They're just slandering the other guys. And so what I've been trying to do is really try and find what plans and what policies they plan to enact. And right now, the two parties I see the biggest here are the NDP and the Conservative Party. The NDP has the human ideology, like they want to help the individual, they want to bring up Canada back. They just don't understand, like they seem to lack the understanding of how. And the Conservatives really want the Canadian identity back, but they don't know how to relay that to Canadians. Like they don't have that compassion. So to me, I want these two to come together to build a government, because we've seen the Liberals, they've done 10 years of damage, and 10 years of damage is restriction on everything we do. We get taxed so heavily for our own internal businesses. It's cheaper for a Canadian to actually set up a business in America and sell to Canadians. Like we need to strip down barriers between our provinces, those kinds of things. So, well, our politics are very like high end in terms of slander and propaganda and everything. If you dig into actual plans, the two key parties that have the best plans are the NDP and the Conservatives.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's look at Canada's. You talk about identity. Now, what is Canada's identity? How should people look at Canada, know Canada? Because when they look at Canada, it looks like the number two option after the US. That if and it almost looks like you are looking at the US, but you are blinking also at its neighbor, you can call, that is Canada, or a cheaper version of that. That is not the right way to look at it, but this seems to be an impression in a way. If you are not getting a chance to settle in the US, you can look at Canada, and then you can look at it from another point of view. But that is not the right identity. Canada has its own way, but not many people know about it. maybe in the past they knew, but
Yeah.
especially in the last 20 years or so, that has, got diluted a bit. How would you like to tell what Canada is? Just US has a history. Nobody
Yep.
knows about Canada's history. How would you like to tell the world about what Canada is? And that is not related to the US.
Yeah. So I just want to relate to your audience. We have a vast history, especially in terms of the wars. Canada stood up during World War II and actually helped majorly during the battles for World War II. We weren't asked to go. We just saw the opportunity and said, "Hey, we align with this. We're going to help," and we did. Canada's identity's always been, for me, built around the pride of helping. We don't care who you are, what you look like. Our whole outlook on anything is, as long as you're caring or nice to people, we're going to help you. We're going to try to help you. We're going to send you a direction. And I don't think Canada's really a country like mentality, because I see it all across the world. And even in my own country, like I see people who I don't see as Canadians, because to me, a Canadian won't yell at you, won't like get angry at you. Yes, they'll have frustrations, but they won't put them out on you. They understand that it's their own. Like, I always feel like Canada's had the perspective of always looking inward to themselves. And over the last 20 years, we've stopped looking at ourselves and trying to rebuild ourselves, because that's the only way. Canada's always been built on change. We're a multicultural country. That's the only way we've survived for our entire lifetime, 150 years. We only survive with help from everybody. So we're just nice people. That's all I have to say. Like, that's our identity.
Absolutely, absolutely. And my personal belief is that Canada should get much more credit in the way it has conducted or done things in the past.
Mhm.
That than it is. US is known to uh, be able to propagate things much better of its achievement. Just you talked about the Second World War.
Yep.
People talk about Omaha Beach and all, but then there were other beaches also where, if I understand, Canada also played a very major role on D-Day itself, if I understand. And
Yes.
then
Yeah.
so did the British people, as well as your British soldiers and others also. But that is one thing. I want to understand Canada as of today, and that is that it has become costlier. Housing is becoming costlier. There were issues about all those strikes, truckers, and everything seems to be looks like it is much more dry, being driven towards being a much more capitalist controlled society. Nothing wrong with that, but the impression might now not sound that great as it was, that Canada is the place to go. A lot of people wanted to move to Canada because of the better quality of life it had to offer. But now a lot
Mhm.
of people are going back from there. How do you look at this changing perception for the world?
I think, yeah, the last 10 years have really been us putting in this oppressionist kind of structure. And I'm not talking like it's all good intentions. Everything was built out of good intentions. But the lack of going back and understanding what you've done, and we are too big of a government to be able to pivot to the needs we need for our people. And that's one of the big things I stress is like we've built up a government so much that there's so much bureaucracy that's where our money goes. Like our taxes go into the bureaucracy and not actually helping anything anymore. So that's one of the big things that like our country's struggling with right now. In terms of uh, people wanting to walk away, I think right now is actually the best time to come back, because Canada's looking to separate from the US and be its own independent brand, essentially. So right now we're pushing entrepreneurship heavily in Canada. Go out, build your own business. We're offering loans and help and resources because we're trying to build our own economy. Part of us integrating with the US is we didn't adopt all of their progressive policies on trade across provinces. And on top of that, our carbon tax like takes at every level of our chain, distribution chain, and then it's rolled into the price, and everybody's like, well, we're not paying taxes. Well, yes, you are paying taxes. The price of goods being this much marginalized is all your tax that's been rolled in from the distribution from the carbon tax. But people don't understand that. Our government's not good at articulating what it's doing and how it's doing it. So for me, I want to see transparency, especially in accounting. When it comes to our government, we should be saying to our people, here's where we're spending our money. Here's the contracts we're giving out. And any contracts that are going out to public sectors, they should also have transparent accounting for us to be able to audit and make sure that everything's reasonable. I think that's where the world needs to get to really be more harmonized as a people, for people to be able to understand what's happening.
Absolutely, Cody. Now let's look at two big problems for Canada. One is the Trump thinking about 51st US state, and then the tariffs by Trump himself, Trump administration. How are Canadians looking at both these things? I read some of the statements, and lawmakers also, I want to understand, how are Canadians looking at this? Do you think Canada will come out stronger by these things? Do you think Trump is only having those dreams, or he is creating some extra, diversionary tactics by talking about these things? Or do you think, he's serious about his intentions? And even on the tariff part, how long do you think Canada will be able to fight on this tariff thing?
I definitely see Trump as wanting this. Like, he wants to take over Canada, especially. So it just came out recently that we have a very rich mineral deposit about 500 kilometers northeast of Thunder Bay. We have vast resources, things that the US were getting for us for next to nothing, and they want it. And so this is the play. The play is more for, though, the Atlantic Strait for transportation, especially in upcoming years, for when the polar ice caps start to melt. That'll become more trade bound. So I definitely see him wanting this. I think Canada has a choice. This upcoming election will really determine what path we go. And it's scary that we're coming up to it so fast, because nobody understands what's happening. We did a snap election because nobody understands. Like, the Canadian people don't understand the Canadian landscape right now. So now's the best time for a politician to spout whatever to get in. So the tariffs are dividing us in terms of the older generations are very scared of what's going on with Trump, and the younger generations are just more scared of what's happening in Canada. And we have this divide that's happening across the country, and it's a generational divide. And I see both sides because I'm on both sides. And yeah, it's funny how everybody just wants the same thing, but they don't know how to articulate that they want the same thing.
Absolutely. Is there a historical basis for Trump's, declaration of, Canada being a part of the US? Is there an historical reference or historical basis, or it's just wishful thinking? It's like I suddenly come out and tell that, anything. Yep. I want to be the president of the US. It has to have some semblance. I need to be a US citizen. I need to have so many. Does it have an historical basis?
I do believe back before Canada was a country, if I'm not mistaken, when Britain was living in Canada, the US tried to take it over. And if I'm not mistaken, we ended up burning down their White House. And it's actually in their national anthem. So that's one of the things that is kind of glossed over in history. Yeah, Canadians burnt down the White House, and the American national anthem actually sings of that.
Okay, so there is some reference. Let's see what happens. But I'm sure nobody wants to lose their sovereignty and become a. But I especially, you can have a much more bigger say. I, as an outsider, can only look at it from understanding all this as international. But this is a different world. Past is past, and this is the present, and in the future we have got the AI coming up. It all depends on how we look at it. As a
Yeah.
software developer, how would you like to put AI to use for the future? Should it be, should it be more AI, or it should be, we talk about being much more human? How do you look at the future of the world from this perspective?
I see AI as being our helper. When you're looking at fantasy, like sci-fi TV and movies, you're going to have an AI assistant, your own personal one that's going to help you out. It's going to be your best friend. It's going to be able to help you out. Those types of things. That's what I want out of the world, because when humans just want to create, they just want to like ideate, they want to explore, they're curious. If we can take the offload of our well-being, our mental tasks, and that it's essentially like a computer, right? We offload a lot of our workload to our computer right now. And I think AI is going to be the exact same thing. It's just going to be able to do more, like do your cleaning, cook for you, make sure like you're healthy, that kind of thing. It's just, I really can't stress this enough. Like the next 5 years are really going to determine that. And I'm really hoping that with the next stage, I believe next year, we're going to have actual autonomous robots out. That it's not just all handled by like a few companies, and that they'll start open sourcing more things. If we can start open sourcing more technologies, people will feel more comfortable with AI because they can understand it better. They can pick at it. And then whenever you can pick at something and learn more about it, you're better to understand it.
Absolutely. Let's look at the content creation part of you. How do you think, when you will be creating more and more content, how do you think your content will be in the future? Will it be much more about authenticity, about the normal things, or do you want it to be in a much more different shape? I want to understand, because why do you call yourself the Weird Canadian? That's the name of your podcast.
Yes. So I'm the Weird Canadian because I've always seen myself as a Canadian. I've always known myself to be a Canadian. But I've always been weird because I'm not a big hockey fan. I don't like Tim Hortons. Like I'm not a big fan of the cold. Like, so I've always felt kind of off. But I've also realized that I am a big fan of the internet. I've never been bound by language. So I've always been in Japan, in India, like watching content from all over the world. So I'm a Canadian, but I'm also like a global citizen as far as I'm concerned. In terms of my channel is going to heavily use AI to showcase understanding, how to learn, allow my audience to pick at me, like use my ideas, use my brain, and me as a resource to find their passions. Eventually, I want to get into interviewing Canadian businesses, the Canadian industries. I want to get in giving transparency to them, showing their passions of Canada, showing where their issues are, and highlighting where we can come up with solutions and letting people run with them. So I'm going to be the backdrop to finding the solution, or finding the problems and giving you ideas for the solutions. And I'm going to let you use me as a resource to run with those solutions and create a better society, a better way. I'm going to give you the ideas and the tools with AI, with communication. I'm going to give it all out. Everything I do is going to be transparent. Everything I say is going to come from my heart. And I've just brought on two editors. So my content's going to get a little bit more engaging as we go forward. And I have a lot more AI tools to come. So you're going to see a lot more interesting things.
Absolutely, a lot more interesting things. So for those people who'd like to know more about you, more about your podcast, more about your future content, about your ideas on software as well as AI, what's the best way for them to connect with you, Cody?
Yep. I'm available on pretty much every platform at The Weird Canadian. There's underscores between the and weird. But yeah, anywhere you search up The Weird Canadian, it should pop up as me.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.